Welcome to the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. This is your go-to resource for personal growth, mastering communication, and influencing and persuasion techniques that will help you unleash the full potential of yourself and others. Here is your host, Alex Morgan.
Welcome to another episode of the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. My name is Alex Morgan, and I'm a master trainer of hypnosis and NLP. And joining us today is Dean Inniss, managing partner at Your Best Life Now, an organization helping people to elevate finance, family, fitness, and faith to maximize their best life through coaching, community, and exclusive once-in-a-lifetime experiences. His unique background of business experience, law enforcement, martial arts training, and economic analysis gives him a rare perspective that enables him to successfully guide entrepreneurs, CEOs, and other top executives to new heights. All right, Dean, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Alex, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share thoughts with you, and I really appreciate what you do for your audience. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks so much. Now, we were talking a bit before, and you like to elevate people's finances, their family, their fitness, and their faith. So why are you so passionate about something like this and helping people in all areas of their life?
When you talk to like the Tony Robbins of the world and everything, they tell you that everybody has a story is what sells. And I guess everybody I've ever talked to has a story. And one of the stories that I have is that my dad passed away at 57 when I was 36. And it changed my thought processes to the point where, he was a typical American. He lost, he lost his battle with cancer, and he didn't have his future planned out. And, they had a lot of fun. They traveled. They didn't have a lot of debt or anything, but my mom was left with out a lot of assets, no debt, but no assets. And so when I sat back as an economist and a martial artist and all of those things, I thought about how does this impact me? And one of the things I realized was that I don't want to be dead at desk, and I don't want my family to be worried about how they were going to go forward if something happened to me. And none of us know when that day is coming. So I just think it's better to be aware. You talk on your show a lot about awareness, and in the martial arts, it's the same thing. And I think in economics, it's the same thing. Being self-aware, corporate aware, physically aware are all some of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. Understanding what's happening around you so you can learn from it, gain from it, absorb it. And in this case, I decided that my family wouldn't have to do those things. So I changed all of my goals at that point. And one of those things was to make sure financially my family was going to be taken care of. So I started doing different stuff because I was in corporate America. I wasn't making millions of dollars like a lot of these people that you would think when you go on the internet, you think everybody's a billionaire. And you and I both know that's not true. But we can be better than we are. And I think everybody should aspire to that. And the one thing I learned from 36 on was that it's easier to be better when you focus on it. It's easier to be better physically, financially, in your faith, in your finances by focusing. And so I did that. So I started getting some different income streams so that when I turned 50, I was able to retire. And I think that doesn't mean that I did. It just means that you plan to have choice. And me, I'm not a big guy about money, but I do understand that money is a tool. And it's only a tool to give me that ability to choose which direction you want to continue, whether you want to still work, whether you want to do something for charities, whether you want to give to your family, whatever it is. But money helps that. And it's ignorant to think that it doesn't. And I guess that, so I focused on those things. So when I retired 4.5 years ago, interestingly enough, it was right in the middle of COVID. And I think people had very little balance. You and I probably saw, we were talking about how I went to Greece just after you moved to Greece. And I went in the middle of COVID, and it was exciting for me. And so I made this choice that I was going to have balance. And I wanted to talk to other people about balance, because sharing your experiences can help others. And some of the people I was coaching had been extremely successful. But a lot of times when people are successful in one area or another, they lose that balance. And so that's where I got into those 4 pillars. Long story, but that's what happened.
Thanks so much for sharing the story, because that's one of the first things I actually did on this podcast. The first episode, I shared my story so people could get to know me, relate to me, pull out whatever emotion. So I really appreciate the story, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who went through something like you as well. Now, you talked a lot about balance, and another thing that you mentioned before we started recording was discipline, and you were talking about having these different thoughts. So do you think how does discipline play a part in achieving all of these different things, or just success generally? How do you look at discipline, or how can someone use discipline in their life?
I think it's critical to any aspiring goal that you have, is to put in place discipline. And it's funny, because when I'm on stage, and I speak all over the world, and when I go on stage, I ask people who has discipline or who have problems with discipline, and usually about 70% of the audience raises their hand and says, I have problems with discipline. And I'll pick 4 of them and bring them up on stage. And when you look at them, I'll pick 2 women that are well put together. In other words, they have their makeup and their hair. And I ask them, I said, so you really have a problem with discipline? Oh, I can't be disciplined at all. And then I'll ask them, how long did it take to get ready this morning? And they'll say 45 minutes to an hour. And I said, how often do you do that? 6 days a week. And I said, you're going to tell me you have a problem with discipline? And what really people have a problem with is deciding what they want to be disciplined about. And the reality is, and I live in America, so I can tell you, most Americans have a problem connecting the dots. They get into a rut, they stay in the rut, they have dreams, but dreams are nothing, because everyone has a dream. A dream only takes shape if you put goals to it and you put discipline to it. But you know what happens to most people, Alex? You hypnotize people and everything else. You know what happens? If they want to lose weight, it's a short-term goal. They'll get on a diet, they'll lose weight, they'll get off the diet, the weight will come right back. You know why? Because they didn't align their goals with what they really want. So discipline means, hey, I have to be aware of what I want. And if I really don't want to give up food, but I get on a diet, it'll work in the short term, but it's never going to work in the long term. And so you have to become aware with what you really want and what your goals are. And you got to negotiate, because if you don't negotiate with yourself, you're not going to get in alignment, and discipline will fall out the window. It's easy for somebody to commit to an hour a day. You and I both know if we could get most people to commit to exercise an hour a day, our healthcare expenses would go down like this. Blood pressure would go down like this. Our society would be in a whole different place. We can't get them to commit to that, but they'll put makeup on for an hour a day, or they'll play a video game for 2 hours a day, and they don't recognize the benefit. So awareness is the first thing. And then we're removing temptations. Once you have that alignment that it's not about the weight. I want to be healthier. I want to be healthier for my family. I want to be healthier for myself. I want to avoid some of the things that happen. All of a sudden, you get this alignment, and it becomes easier to commit to something long-term that has a lot loftier import. And that's why I said earlier, most Americans can't connect the dots. They can't go, losing weight, I need to do it, I'll lose weight. No, it's not about losing weight. It's about being healthy. It's about having more time with your family. It's about those things. And then when those things start soaking in, all of a sudden I could commit a little more time to it. I can do a little more. And you and I both know that discipline doesn't happen like that, right? You got to remove temptations. You got to set some goals. They have to be realistic, right? What do we say? Smart, measurable, attainable. You can't hit these lofty goals because you can't go from here to here. That's why there's that line, right? And then you practice daily and you create new habits. I told you I fought martial arts, and one of the things that I learned is I can throw a punch in any place and get within an eighth of an inch of my target. People go, "Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing." It's not. It's that I've done a million punches. When you do something every day and you practice it over and over again, it becomes part of you. And that's where discipline transitions to you. And then when it's you, you own it. It's easier, part of your lifestyle. So that's some of the things. And then the other thing that I think is people have this idea that willpower is limited. And you and I've been around a long time. I know that willpower is unlimited. It's based on what you decide it is. So we have to take that perception and remove that and say, willpower is there. I just got to build it like I build a muscle, and it works that way. Then you got to have a backup plan because you know what? You're going to trip up. I studied discipline with the SEALs, and the Navy SEALs always say, hey, look, you can't eat an elephant all at once. You can eat it a bite at a time. And if you eat it a bite at a time, all of a sudden it'll be gone. So, they look at that, they have a backup plan. But the funny thing is, the biggest part of discipline is the ability to forgive yourself. You can go along, you have this, you're going really hard, and then you go out and have a big steak, you get some mac and cheese, you have a couple of drinks, and you're like, oh crap, there goes the diet, right? That's where Americans fail, because once they get off it, they're back to norm. We see it in January. By the 17th or 18th of January, people are out of the gym again. I've been going to the gym my whole life. I know in January it's going to suck because there's 5 times as many people as usual. And then by the end of January, I'm back to the normal guys that go all the time, right? Well, that's because people can't forgive themselves. You make a lot of mistakes in life. We're human, and we make mistakes. The people that are successful go, I fell off, but I'm back on tomorrow. Forget it. Rear view mirror stuff. I tell people all the time, that's rear view mirror. Why are you worried about it? Get back on your program. You'll be good. And so those are some of the things that I work on when I coach people about discipline and when I show them about discipline.
You've mentioned quite a bit about habits as well and building a habit with discipline. So obviously this is helping your clients. And I imagine a lot of that discipline came from some of your background in martial arts. That's just me connecting the dots there. What other habits do you see with the people you work with where you're like, if they have discipline and plus they have maybe some of these other habits that it'll really help them get the results or success that they want? Do you notice a common theme in a lot of people?
I do. People that are successful have drive. So they have that willpower thing. And one of the things that they get confused about is that, and this is a hot topic, right? Work-life balance. Okay. And oddly enough, we talk about balance, but work-life balance, I always relate it to, I don't know if you know this, but again, my martial arts training, there's this white and black symbol that goes in a circle, and it's called yin and yang. You ever seen it before? And everybody thinks that it's equally balanced. Okay, so when they see it, they go, that's the white and black are balanced, but it's actually nothing like that. What you learn in the martial arts is that's a constant flow. It changes all the time. And I study with some brilliant martial artists, and they tell you awareness is what you have to know because everybody's body is different. When you age, you become different. And when you're financially successful, you're different. Or when you're struggling to be financially successful, you're different. And so I tell people all the time when I teach work-life balance, that is not 50-50. It's based on where you're at in your life. However, here's some of the tools that you can use. When you know you're trying to grow a business and you're an entrepreneur and you need to spend time and you need to take time to do it. And you become a slave for a period of time. That's okay if you go to your family and you share your goals and you say, this is what I'd like to do. This is what it's going to take now. This is where we're going to be in the future. And this is what it's going to be like then. I need your help. I need you to understand what I'm doing. I need you to help me. And you need to keep me accountable. And what I've found is when you share those with the important people in your life, right? First of all, you get understanding. So you have a lot less friction, a lot less cortisol problems, a lot less stress. You accomplish your goals faster, right? Because you remove obstacles. But your family is keyed in with you. So you're approaching the goal together. And so that work-life balance takes on a whole different meaning. My work is taking up more of my time, but my family's involved with my work. So they're actually part of that balance. And even though the recreational part is suffering, the family isn't suffering because they do it together. So that work-life balance thing is a constantly fluid challenge. And the way to approach it is by sharing your goals with the people around you, your employees, your bankers, all of those people, because then you have a team of support. So when you fall off, you miss a goal, everybody's there to help you. Everybody's there. It's like, it's okay. Get back on. We're good. We're going for it. And then when things start to get better, you got to be part of your word and you got to shift that balance and you got to give those people what you promised them. You got to be more for them. And it seems like during our lives, we find different options like that. When I was going to retire, I thought, I'm going to kick back. And then somebody said, oh, no, you can't do that. You got too much knowledge. So I'm like, I don't know. Well, you and I talked about this. I started coaching people and it was like, bam, I got all this energy. I feel like I'm 25 again. And so, there's that little balancing I had to talk to my wife and my son about, and we're good. And, we've done some things now that we've never done before. We've traveled all over the world. We've done some incredible stuff. Work-life balance is all about negotiation, awareness, team discipline, mentorship, and knowing you can't do anything by yourself. There you go.
You have to have either people in your corner supporting you or have other people who have what you want to help you get, what you want. So you need to have
coaches, strategists, people like you and me.
Yeah, you have to be able to put trust in people to help you get there. One of the other things about your background that's really interesting to me, because I went to school for finance. You're an economic analyst yourself. So I was kind of thinking this whole time, how do you tie in your expertise with economics with then helping people set goals or achieve goals? Do you see things that cross over in your thinking that you can apply to both? I'm interested in that, if you can give us any insight.
I absolutely do. As a matter of fact, one of the things I take pride in is taking the economy, both macro and micro, and teaching my people about it. Because I know there's a lot of economists that think they got to hold that to themselves, and it's crap. The reality is the economy is subservient to us, not the other way around. It's a study of, and this is how I tell people all the time. I said, look, economics is beautiful because it's really the study of how humans allocate resources. And it's not scientific because it's about our demand that changes what the economy delivers and produces. Now, we do allow people to influence our decision, which is now another portion of that economy that I teach people about. It's like you have to insulate your thought processes from all of this information that's trying to direct what you buy and how you do it. Economics, in its purest sense, I talk about it all the time. I look at how today's economy, interest rates impact real estate, how everybody wants to talk about how the dollar is going to be doomed and how cryptocurrency is going to take over. And so I have a lot of fun with that because I talk about all of those things and I break them down and I give people a real sense of what's going on in a language that they can understand. Because the bottom line is economists can use words, but the reality is you can break it down very quickly. I talk about Bitcoin all the time. Somebody tells me, oh, Bitcoin's going to be $1 million. I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, what? It is. And I said, no, it's not. 17 million Bitcoin controlled by a large number of people that have it. They dictate the sale. They dictate what it's going to buy. They dictate who's going to make money on it. I said, governments don't survive on blockchain technology. They survive on taxes. And anytime a cryptocurrency is going to cut into their ability to charge tax revenue to be in existence, they will put all of their resources at making that a lot less hidden and more transparent, and they'll attach the taxes to it. So that's what we're seeing right now already. The digital currency that works best with banks and governments, those are the ones that are going to succeed. And yeah, digital currency is coming, but there's going to be a transition. It's kind of like one of the things that we have right now is everybody wants to have carbon zero emissions. The truth of it is that's a really good goal and we should attain it. But the way they're doing it is completely irrational. There has to be a cycle of transition. There is regulation in place. There are things like that. But the bottom line is we're seeing in Europe right now that they need natural gas. They need petroleum. And they need it because the transition is going to take 15 to 20 years. In that interim, what did we do? We shut off our fuel to them. So now where do they go? The Middle East, Russia, and they have to negotiate with China to get fuel at a much higher price because we are very short-sighted from a political standpoint and don't look at things from an economic standpoint. So I shed light on a lot of those things. I'm well tied in. I used to be an advisor for the Fed. So I get all the data from the Fed. I get a lot of data from outside sources. So I really enjoy sharing it. So thanks for asking about it.
Yeah, I used to follow it a lot more, all the financial and economic stuff. I like the thinking behind it. So it's something that I always will think about different prices. I was into gold and silver for quite some time too. I still have my coins and all this, stowed away.
It's a good piece of your portfolio. We look at BRICS. I don't know if you know about BRICS right now, right? But BRICS is that group that is trying to get back onto the gold standard. Well, you know why they're trying to get back onto the gold standard? Because they have a lot of gold. So if they can encourage people to get on the gold standard, it will be a competitive currency. But the reality is, the U.S. stock market is kind of like the gold standard right now. You could be globally everywhere, and everybody wants to put dollars in the stock market. I would tell you that our stock market is incredibly overvalued because people have more confidence in that than they have in their own governments and in their own currencies and all of that. So until that changes, the dollar still, when I went to Greece, they loved the dollar. I didn't have to change money anywhere. They took dollars everywhere. And I love that, right? But it just gives you some base fundamental ideas of the economy that just don't change with the word of a politician. And I think that people should tear back the shroud of what the politicians are saying and look at the reality and know that, yes, there are certain things that we need to do. We do need to be concerned about our environment, but we have to have a better approach so that in the interim, we don't cause issues. Look, the United States can go to a zero carbon policy. It's not going to change much because China doesn't care. They pollute as much as they want. India, they pollute as much as they want. And they have a hell of a lot more population. We only have 330 million people here. There's still 7 billion people that have to be accounted for. So just like you said, right? If we use some analysis and just use some common sense, that economy becomes less of a shroud and more, I understand where the resources are going and why.
Yeah, like you said, an allocation of resources. So when you're working with people individually, you talked about balance. So what about like allocating their own resources, things like time, money, energy? Do you do some work with
Brilliant.
this? How do you coach people with their resources that they have?
Well, I absolutely do that very thing. It's like we talked about earlier, how money's a tool. The first thing you have to really identify is what someone wants. We go back to discipline, and we have to sometimes cut through some shells and figure out what they really want. A lot of times people say, well, I want to be wealthy. Well, what's the definition of wealthy? To me, it's time, because of my experience, right? My dad passed away. You can have all the money in the world. If you're dead, nobody cares, right? Or you can have enough money to have time. That's a different thing. So once I find out what they want, then we strategically plan, where would you feel comfortable putting money to work for you? Where would you feel comfortable turning loose some of the reins of your business? Can we find somebody to take your place so that you can be an owner, not an operator? Can we put in place goals for your business so that it becomes automated? I teach alignment, simplicity, and foresight for business. And it's similar to people's goals, right? If everybody in your business understands what your mission is or what your purpose is, right? And then you simplify it. In other words, you automate it. You put job descriptions, standard operating procedures, training, retraining, and expectation. You set clear expectations for everybody. You evaluate them, you retrain. Then all of a sudden your business becomes something that's more self-sustaining than you being the talent. First thing I always try and do is remove the talent from the business, because people feel like if I'm not there, the business will fail. Well, I know that's not true. The business will go on if you train your replacement and you give them the tools. And quite often, they'll have a different skill set that can even elevate the business further. So I do those types of things. And then I look at them and like I said, if they're out of shape, I said, your energy is suffering. And we talk about it from not being, a guy that's, cut or anything. We just talk about energy and how to be better, because you're going to need more energy. Then we look at those goals and we put them in set time frames, so you have some accountability. Most entrepreneurs understand accountability. And so if you can put that in other pieces of their life, they tend to pick up on it. Sometimes you got to beat them over the head a little bit, but they get it. And then they move forward. And, it's the beautiful thing. And that's why the first thing I said to you, Alex, is thank you for doing this, because we don't teach things that are necessary in life in school. Why the hell wouldn't we teach this stuff in school? We talk about it for 40 minutes and people can find things that can change your life in 40 minutes. And yet they go to school for 13 years and they don't learn this stuff. Crazy.
It is crazy. I always think about that too now. Like, even people that take my trainings, they're like, well, why didn't they teach that in school? I said, well, it doesn't matter. You're learning it now. So just take it for what it is now. I think one of the things that you touched on that it's really important to me as well is when you said that they can put someone to run their business instead of them being the operator, the actual owner. So is there like one success story of this that you can share? Because I'm sure a lot of people that are listening are like, oh, I have to be in charge. I have to be the owner still. I need to operate the business. Do you have one result that you can share that can really open up the minds of the listeners and be like, hey,
I have a few, because it's big, but let me just share one with you. When I started consulting, one of my first clients owned an ATM business. They were very successful. And it was a small core of employees, but it was a very successful business. And so I started working with them on implementing all the SOPs and taking all the stuff out of their head, putting it on paper, letting them see how somebody could be trained to do this, that they're not the only person in the world. And they did that. And then they talked about wanting to leave the business that they'd been in for 25 years. So we did that. We put the business in a position. The first thing that I'll tell you is that businesses that are automated and self-sustaining get increased multiples. In other words, if you have a service industry business, you're looking at a 3 multiple times EBITDA, and that's what you're going to sell for. If you have that service business and it doesn't rely on you to be there, it goes to a 5 or 6, because then the person that's buying it doesn't need to be there. So it's turnkey for them. They don't need to pay you to be there for 2 years to transition out. How many times do you hear that crap, right? So if you automate the business, turn it into something that somebody could buy and is going to make money, it's worth more. The end of the story was we went through that whole process. We put them in a great shape. They sold the business for about 35% more than they thought. And now they were at Pebble Hills last week on the Facebook. I saw them playing golf, and it's an amazing thing. And they're happy. Now, I also teach that you can put your business in that same frame to be sold, because the thing I teach business people is build your business from day one as if you're going to sell it. Build it from day one as if you're going to sell it. And they go, why? I don't want to sell. I said, that's not what I said. Build it as if you're going to sell it. And guess what you have at the end of the day? Choice. Because then you're an owner, and if you don't want to sell it, you pay somebody a little bit to run it, and it's passive income for the rest of your life, and you can check on metrics or anything. Or if you want out, you can sell it. So I've had several of those experiences, and it's really, really awesome.
That just really expanded my mind as well. I recently read a book that touched on a lot of these concepts, so I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of people, they don't necessarily think like this. So especially the multiple part, where you could now sell it for that much more, because yes, you don't have to pay the operator to stick around, because this is what a lot of people do. They even sell their business and then they end up sticking around as well. Then they end, have a job for a bit too. So I think you shared some really insightful things. Can you give us a little information of where people can find you if they want to get in touch with you or get your coaching or anything like that? Because I think you were such a great guest. You have such great energy. I'm sure people would want to know these things.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, the website to my company is www.yblnow.com. That has, it's got testimonials, it's got examples of our trips, it's got some of the stuff that we do. It's way cooler than I could ever portray, and I'm there, so I'm excited. And it has how to get in touch with me or apply to be in that. I'm also on Instagram. I'm not super active, but occasionally I put stuff on there, and it's DJ_crusade. That's my Instagram. Facebook is just Dean Inniss, and LinkedIn is Dean Inniss. And occasionally I'll put some economic stuff on there, and I'll share it. And I've been getting razzed by my team, so I'm going to be making more appearances on social media. And I do think that there's a lot that can be said and done. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing these podcasts with people like you, Alex, because you said it. There's not enough of this information out there. And people should be grateful that you're taking your time and your life to do this. I certainly am. So thank you for sharing time with me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I look at it as we're building like a knowledge pool for everyone. So now when they go to take this knowledge into new situations, that knowledge pool just keeps expanding, and then that means their results can also expand along the way. So that's kind of a final thought for everyone. So thanks again, Dean, for coming on the show. I had a lot of fun. Your energy you're so excited about what you're doing, so I hope people can hear that as well.
Well, me too. It's fun, and like I said, for an old guy, I'm doing all right.
So thanks for listening. And wherever you listen to this podcast, please rate the podcast so it can get into the minds of more people. And I'd love to hear your feedback. And I hope to see you on the next episode.